Guys, I have to tell you something that must stay between you and me. Betwixt us. Before I started recording, I had a really hot date with this girl, and she smelled so good. Her name, you might be asking? Why, her name was Mary Jane. Hi, welcome, Even. Welcome, Even. I am Haunted Hippie. Government first name is Kylie, though. Also, one thing about me, if you're new here, is that a little schmoint hates to see me coming. I got some pretty strong feedback on my Y2K review that I should be doing more stoned reviews, please. So, you're welcome, by the way. It was something that was requested of me, and I'm finally obliging the request. Now, who would have thought? Satan's favorite daughter, the Antichrist herself. She goes on hot dates with Mary Jane. It's true. And also, I would like to say, if you're a person of a similar aura, hey, go ahead and click subscribe. Stick around. I talk about all things horror, and sometimes I do it while I'm high. Also click the like button and the notification bell, that way you never miss the next video. I almost forgot what the second thing was. I do have bullet points so that I don't get totally lost. I tend to go on tangents and then I forget what I'm talking about. The goal is not to do that today. So let's get into why I have gathered you all here today. We gotta talk about Wolfman. Really the first major horror release of the year. The actual first theatrical horror release was The Damned. We'll talk about that when I do my January recap. But this was Blumhouse, baby. This was the 2025 equivalent of Night Swim. So exciting. And I'm gonna have a whole spoiler-free section, and then we'll get into spoilers at the end, because in some ways, many ways even, I watched this movie so that you don't have to, or so that you don't have to spend money on it in theaters. You can wait till it's streaming. Oh, spoilers. That's a spoiler on how I felt about the movie. Darn. There's still a lot to get into. Let's get started. Let's get going. I want to kick things off with what I brought into the movie, my energy going into the viewing experience, because I feel like not enough reviewers kind of explain that, because it really informs what you think about the movie. Your life story, who you are as a person, what you ate for breakfast. It all matters. They're all pieces that make up the sum of your parts. Okay, so, alright. I want to talk about the original Wolfman from 1941. I rewatched it before going to the theater. And this is a movie that I didn't grow up on, but if you've been around, you know that... You know that if you ain't choking, you ain't smoking, baby. Grandpa Jim, he showed me the original Wolfman only one time though. I don't know why, because he would always show me House of Wax with Vincent Price, House on Haunted Hill. I grew up on Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, and my longtime subscribers have heard me say this a million times, but we might have newbies here, okay? I'm trying to hit 50K this year. Let's circle back. The point of that was that I'd only seen the Wolfman one time when I was quite young, so I was rewatching it for the first time 20 years later. But the thing that was so vividly burned into my memory was just the imagery of the movie, because obviously I was 5, so I didn't remember the plot. Who cares? I'm 5. But I so distinctly remember all the dissolves of the transformation, and I was kind of shocked to find that when I rewatched the movie, it looked exactly how I remembered it as a kid. I don't know why I was shocked, because the stuff that's really carved into my long-term memory from movies I watched as a kid is certain images. It's the shot of Victor using the quill in Corpse Bride, or it's the entire screenplay of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. I can quote that front to back. Damn it, I promised no tangents. I've been recording for 5 minutes, and here I'm doing it. It was good. The original Wolfman is good. I don't think it's great. I feel a lot of times classics get confused with masterpieces. Not every classic is a masterpiece, but I think it is my second favorite of the original Universal Classic monster movies. Oh, another one that I grew up on, my grandpa showed me several times, was Creature from the Black Lagoon, and I rewatched that a couple years ago, I think, and loved. So Creature is my favorite, and then I think it would go Wolfman. I also recently watched Frankenstein and Dracula for the first times, and those were boring. I need to catch up on the rest of them, especially Invisible Man. Ooh, what a gorgeous segue. Okay, I also want to talk about Lee Whannell's Invisible Man, because I love that movie. I don't know if now I love the movie. I loved it when it came out. It was one of the coolest things I'd ever seen when I was 20 years old. And I remember leaving the theater after watching that movie and just genuinely being scared to walk to my car because it was dark out and my friends had parked like in a different parking structure at this mall, and I was so spooked. I was like, he could be anywhere. I love the marriage of that old story with modern sci-fi and then how it's tied in with this very evergreen sentiment about domestic abuse. Thought it was handled very, very well in that movie. So imagine my shock and horror when the themes of Wolfman are completely fumbled. They're a complete mess. But anyway, so I was taking sort of my experiences with the original Wolfman and Invisible Man into my viewing experience of the new Wolfman. So even though I was kind of hearing like some mixed things, hadn't really heard almost anything about it because I went on Thursday on preview night, I was just like cautiously optimistic. I was like, you know what? James Wan would have no career if it wasn't for Lee Whannell and his brilliant writing. I really liked Invisible Man. I still like that movie. So how bad could it really be? And the answer might surprise you. What is the 2025 Wolfman all about though, really? This film follows Blake, who has a troubled history with his father, living out off the grid in the forest. The legend of this hiker who has the face of the wolf really colors his whole childhood. And then in adulthood, when he gets a letter that his father has been declared deceased, he has to go back to his childhood home with his family to pack it up. Now, first of all, let's talk about the casting. I thought that it was really wonky besides Christopher Abbott. And since this is a tale that is about a century old, I think it's okay that I tell you that he is our Wolfman. This movie has a cast of 3 people, and then there are some like periphery characters. He is good. He's very good. He does a lot of acting without doing any speaking. It also feels genuine. I think if anything about this movie were to tug at my heartstrings, it would be him. But hey, this movie didn't do that, and we'll get more into that. He's someone that people are less familiar with than I thought, but also I was there for Sanctuary. I watched him play off of Margaret Qualley in a very interesting tale of power dynamics. So good. That movie is so good. It's perfect. I quite literally was born to watch that film. So if you haven't seen it, you're slacking. Christopher Abbott is good. I love him. Now, Julia Garner. Listen, I've got some questions. I've got some concerns also. And I have some comments. She is 30 years old, so it makes sense that she's playing Christopher Abbott's wife. Sure, he's 38. That's all fine and good. The problem is she looks so young. She looks like she's in her early 20s. And in this movie, she has a 10-year-old daughter. So what in the hell is up with that? That casting choice was so strange. I don't know if I'd go so far as to say she looked like the older sister of her daughter, but I'm inclined to say that that casting choice would have been more convincing. Also, she wasn't really given anything to do. It's such a stark contrast to The Invisible Man, where Elizabeth Moss, oh my god, you cannot help but sympathize with her. Her performance is just nuts. It's not really understated at all. Like, you can tell she's going through it. She's losing her mind. Julia Garner, she plays things a lot more subtle, and I don't know if that's the direction or the writing, but a lot of the performance is very flat. I personally think that it is the writing. I don't think she was given much to do. They weren't really given much space to like develop as characters. I didn't really get any sense of like an arc with her, which is annoying because they at least kind of tried to set one up. But now looking back, I'm like, oh, well, I guess that just was sort of like a lazy exposition dump, because they kind of set up the characters with like these conversations in the beginning, like, hey, we're not doing so well. Hey, come with me to clear out my dead dad's house. That'll be so good for us. And she's like, I was a writer once. Hey, guess what never comes back up again? Hey, guess what interpersonal relationships never get fleshed out beyond that point? Kind of feels like a case of a movie wanting to have its cake and eat it too. Oh, I want to dump this information on you so that these people seem more real. But hey, I'm not going to give you any of the emotional catharsis of circling back. Also, the casting of the child was really weird because I feel like in the script she was written to be like 6 years old, but then they have a 10-year-old actress. And big ups to her because that little girl is British, and I didn't know that until I looked up the cast after the fact. Convincing American accent, but I don't know why they were having her play it up like she was like 6. It was very weird because you have this mom who looks way too young to be the mom of a child this old. The child is clearly old, but like acting younger, which maybe was like purposeful to make the ages make more sense or something. I don't understand how these dynamics books came out like this, because guess who wrote Insidious? And guess what was such a marvelous portrayal of a suburban family unit? Is that what Leigh Whannell thinks that people from the city are like? Because there actually is more commentary about city people. Like when they get back to the mountains, like off the grid, they run into this dude and he's talking with the wife and he's like, I don't think you're tough, but that's a good thing. Like you haven't had it rough like we do out here. You've had a good life. You've been safe. I think the themes were like my biggest issue with the movie overall, and just like the lack of follow through on a lot of stuff. The biggest idea that the movie presents is generational trauma. They really, really want you to know that this movie is about generational trauma. They use the Wolfman and the transformation as a giant allegory for it, basically. I've seen several readings of the movie. The one that I resonate with more is sort of the exploration of male rage. I saw someone saying that it was an allegory for dementia, and I haven't listened to any interviews or anything, so I don't know. I did not get that from the movie, but you could easily project that onto it, and like, I guess that would work. But there's a very explicit line of dialogue where he's like, you try so hard to avoid your kids getting scarred by the world that you end up being the thing that scars them. So, girly, like, I don't think that's about dementia. And I'll like unpack that a little bit more, explain a little bit more in spoilers. Just know for now that the whole allegory is severely underbaked, and yet it's so ham-fisted at the same time. I don't know how, like, that doesn't seem like those problems should coexist. Actually, no, I guess maybe that makes perfect sense. Like, if something is really ham-fisted and it's done with no tact, then yeah, you could consider that underbaked. Like, they needed to workshop it a little bit. Male rage, aggression, anger, blah, blah, blah. It's old hat. This movie just didn't really do anything new with it, and it felt clunky. And also, what we've all been waiting for. You want to hear me talk about the look of the Wolfman. I'm sure that you heard it in the wind across the internet that at Universal Studios, they pulled the Wolfman component from one of the mazes. People got one look of the Wolfman, or like how he was supposed to be dressed in the maze, and they said, oh no, not on my watch. It got clowned so badly that they pulled it. They yoinked it. They were like, oh no. And guess what? By that point, the movie was finished. What were they gonna do? But what do I think? That's what the world's really been waiting for. What does Haunted Hippie think of the way the Wolfman looks? So, it's not good. But it's not as bad as some divas would have you believe. Now, for older horror fans, say you're like a generation or two older than me, you might walk into this movie and be so offended. I'm not gonna deny that, okay? But for me personally, and listen, like, I saw the OG Wolfman at a very young age. I am deeply endeared to like old monster movies and 50s sci-fi. I don't mind a director stepping in and trying to do something different with a very well-trodden IP. I don't want it to look the same. However, I would say that this Wolfman is much more akin to The Fly. You could tell that that was like a huge inspiration because of the family component, the relationship component, a man who is like slowly transforming and withering away. Some of the shots were reminiscent of The Fly. And in spoilers, I want to get into a couple other shots that are like big homages to classic horror. There's a sprinkle of some feelings of An American Werewolf in London where you get some close-up shots of practical prosthetics, and I just felt like that was a bold move if they were not gonna even try to lengthen the transition or even just remind us of a much better werewolf film. They try to one-up it in certain areas that just like don't really make a lot of sense. The whole thing about Wolfman is that he is a wolf man. Like, he's not an animal. In the way that I view it, he's like not even really a werewolf. Maybe that's a hot take. Look, I view Professor Lupin as a werewolf. I view Ginger from Ginger Snaps as a werewolf because they turn into full wolves. They are not bipedal. They're running around on all fours. Like, I think that it's respectable to like try to do new things. I just felt like things got a little bit too lost in the sauce. With the Invisible Man, Wolfman, you can give it a pass for doing something very new age. The sci-fi of that movie was actually really cool and like genuinely taking that to a new place. Maybe I'm just not giving it a pass in Wolfman because it just didn't work. He basically looked like if Fenrir Greyback had a baby with Seth Brundle, the Fly. And the transformation is like weirdly drawn out. It's not all that once American Werewolf style. So by the time he's in his final form, I think that there was supposed to be a reveal, but it didn't feel like a reveal. It just was like, oh, this guy again. And I'll be so honest with you, I'm almost wrapping up my spoiler-free section. I was laughing a lot during this movie, and not with the movie, okay? There were moments where it was supposed to be very earnest, and I was laughing at it. There were moments of stylistic decisions that I guess I have an unpopular opinion on, but sometimes you would see the world from the wolf's perspective, and I thought it looked unbelievably dumb. Some people thought that was cool. They were like, well, one positive of the movie, it was kind of cool to see what he was seeing. Disagree. I thought it looked so weird. The tone of the film is just so clunky. Maybe if it was like cast better, it would have been brought to life a bit more. And once again, I want to stress that I think Christopher Abbott really was putting in work under all that makeup, and props to the practical makeup. I know that like people are gonna say that overall it looks bad. If this wasn't a Wolfman movie, I think people would be really cool with the makeup actually. Actually, I think that people would think it looks really good and they'd be like, wow, grotesque new creature, awesome. I thought he was doing a great job under all of that, but the circumstances surrounding his performance made me laugh, and sometimes at his performance, because it just was like, I can't believe he is being so earnest in this moment right now. Now, overall, I had a good time. I gave it 2.5 stars on Letterboxd, and that feels kind of generous given the quality of the movie, I hate to say, because I didn't think it was going to be great, but I thought that it was going to be a little bit good, and it was below expectation. I'm so sad to report. Overall though, I had a good time. I saw it with fellow director Jose Prendes, and by halfway through the movie, there were like 3 other people in there with us. They had left, so it was just us in this Dolby cinema, and so we just started like cracking jokes and we were laughing. Like, I had a good time. So if you're feeling antsy, you're waiting on Presents next week, you're waiting for Companion, I don't regret going to see this movie, but it was not even a cinematic experience. I saw it in the Dolby cinema, and like, that's my favorite theater. The biggest, the bestest, the brightest, the lasers, and it just like didn't matter. Like, being in the Dolby cinema did not even heighten the experience, which is insane. That's like impossible to do. But the movie also was just so dark. Like, Blumhouse, what happened to the lighting budget? Jose told me this movie cost $25 million, but you couldn't afford some gaffers? What happened to Blumhouse having style? What happened to Insidious costing $1.5 million? That movie has such stylistic flair on it. Are you kidding me? The coloring of that, the desaturation, like, you can hardly tell how cheap that movie is. The whole look of the further, honey, the further, but then you have $25 million, and this movie, it looks like a step above what you would find maybe on Netflix. But as Jose said, we actually did a little review fresh out of the theater for his channel. He says it feels too much like a movie, and neither of us like quite could explain it beyond that sentiment, but that's what it felt like. It felt too much like a movie. Like, I don't understand. And I'm not alone. Somebody on Letterboxd was like, what happened to the lights? I thought that werewolves liked the full moon. Why can't I see anything? You're funny. Overall, if you frequent the theater, you see a lot of movies a year, it might be fun to go and laugh at it, or just to like be part of the conversation. I try to remember to always recommend that you go and see a movie for yourself to like form your own opinion, but also in this economy, in these trying times, I think with this one you should wait until it's at home, because honestly, like, the theater didn't really heighten the experience at all. I think it would be similar at home. I had some Letterboxd friends giving it like 3.5, 4 stars, so you never know. You never know. If you've got some father trauma, this one might hit home. That's the best silver lining I can find about this movie. But I think that my Letterboxd review will succinctly cap this spoiler-free section. The first letter of the credits is a giant glowing L, which pretty much sums up the viewing experience. It's true, the screen like fades to black, there is a giant white glowing L, and then it turns into Lee 1L. And I was like, brother, That seems like a big oversight. How did so many people see the final cut of the film and they didn't think, hey, why do we end the movie with like a giant L? What might that conjure in a viewer's mind? It's an important question to ask, guys, and you really dropped the ball on that one. But that's gonna do it for my spoiler-free section. I don't feel like getting into spoilers that much at this point, but I will, because a lot of you guys are not gonna end up watching this movie, so let's get into a bit of a plot breakdown. The movie opens on a young Blake who is with his father and they're hunting in the woods, and you think that the movie is setting up this theme about like death and how quickly it comes because the kid finds these mushrooms and the dad is like, don't touch those, you don't want to touch those death caps, they'll kill you right away. So then you're thinking, okay, the mushrooms are definitely gonna come back up, right? Wrong. Incorrect. They never come back up again. That's just a thing that's like very pointedly in the first like 5 minutes. It really feels like it's something you need to pay attention to. Oh, also, the opening shot of the movie is like a wasp that's like eating an ant, and the other is his brother ants are like attacking the wasp. And so I thought that might be relevant. It wasn't. Anyway, young Blake, he's hunting with his father and they have a run-in with the wolf man, but you don't get to see it. And then at the end of that sort of prologue, his father is on the radio and he's talking to someone and he's like, I saw it, like I need to go out and I need to kill it, like it's here. And the guy on the radio is like, man, don't go. You don't need to go. You don't need to be proving anything. Like, don't go running around for something that may or may not be there. And he's like, I saw it. Also in the opening, they're kind of like ham-fisting the whole like angry father thing. Really, he's like being protective of his son because he ran off in the woods without him, but then he like yells at him and he's like really mean to him or whatever. And then anyway, after he's on the radio, there's a fade to black and then it just says 30 years later. And at that point, I felt like, okay, some stuff has definitely been cut out here. This movie feels all types of chopped up, but like they cut out the wrong things. I think there should have been a little bit more development of the father character in the beginning because of where it goes. I got a little bit of whiplash. Like the 30 years later thing, it felt very abrupt. It was strange. So we meet the current family where Blake is at. He's walking along with his daughter in New York City and he yells at her almost exactly like how his father yelled at him. And they set up this thing where his daughter like puts her hand on his forehead and she reads his mind and she's like, I love my little girl very much. And he's like, yes. And I was like, I know this is gonna come back. Very soon after that, you get the line about like scarring your children. And so just right from the jump, within the first 15 minutes, you're like, okay, we get it. Like fathers can be tough. A lot of guys don't want to end up like their fathers. It's true, so true. Then they go to the woods and that's when they have their first run-in with the wolf man. They don't even make it a day out there. They don't even make it to the house before they have a run-in with the wolf man and they crash the truck and everything. And then the whole movie takes place over the course of one night. That was a choice. That I think it would have been more interesting had this been a more drawn out process. Like imagine they're at the house for like a month and the transformation is super gradual. But then the allegory works better because it's like as he's unpacking his childhood, the more he sort of changes and like absorbs all the bullshit from his father by being in his house and stuff. Whatever. What do I know? The reason why I know the majority of this movie was lifted from The Fly is because there were some other very obvious homages to classic horror. First of all, with Jurassic Park, at one point they're on top of this like greenhouse, this like plastic greenhouse, or it's like a shed, I don't know. And the Wolfman is in there and he's like jumping up and he tears at the plastic that they're sitting on. And the little girl, she falls down, but then they like scoop her up right before he like grabs her. And that's just like the first Jurassic Park where they're climbing up into the vents and the raptor like almost grabs her leg. And then this is circling back to kind of the issue I had with him not really being a wolf man and being much more animalistic. So at one point the movie turns into Saw because he gets stuck in a bear trap. And guess who bites off his own foot and starts crawling away? So Lee Wanell, like, we see you. And yes, I am a big Saw fan, but guess who's not gonna clap for that? It was cool and it was gnarly. I didn't feel that it fit in. Same thing goes for earlier on in his transformation when he is literally like taking a huge chunk out of his own arm. He's just like biting into his arm. And I think it's because he like bites out of, I think like the other Wolfman's finger was like in his arm or something. I don't know. Hey, why was he doing that? And hey, why was his wife just staring at him doing that? I think that she did a really good job of displaying shock, but then she did not act accordingly after the fact. Hey, when you see your husband doing something like that and you have suspicion that he was infected by the animal that scratched him, that is currently prowling outside the house and behaving extremely aggressively, hey, maybe leave the husband behind. Maybe don't pull him into the truck with you when you're trying to get away. Not winning any Mom of the Year awards there, and also letting him into the house again. It's like, at that point, guess who's number one? Your child. Guess who takes priority above all else that you need to protect? Your child. Why are you letting your wolfman husband back into the house? Because your child said so? Because daddy needs help, let him in. She's 10. What does she know? It got super repetitive with the haunted house quality of certain scenes where like the characters would be standing in the middle of the house and they're going, oh, looking around because they hear the prowling wolfman outside. And I think that that's supposed to be like kind of a layered element to it because they think that his dad is dead, but he's haunting the house. They feel like, you know, they're hearing this monster all around. And then in the end, it does end up being his dad. Wow, plot twist. Except that no, it wasn't, because so early on, like within the first act, they go down into the basement and he finds his dad's jerky stash. There are these giant hanging things of meat. So guess who knew immediately what this reveal was gonna be? Huge hanging chunks of meat in your basement? Oh, you're a wolf. You're a wolf man. And also, like, you know, we've been talking about the passing of the disease of toxic masculinity. I just wish that more of the actual wolf lent itself to that, because the visuals, I don't understand how that ties in. I don't understand why that's important other than just being a gimmick. At one point, when he's staring into the forest and we see the perspective of the wolf, it literally looks like acid visuals. Who knew that turning into a wolf could be so trippy? Literally, like, the trees look like they're like melting upwards and there's like a glowing green light, and I think that's supposed to be like his night vision or something. Why are the trees melting? Why do the human beings, like his wife and daughter, why do they have glowing eyes? Why? I was left with so many questions despite the intent of the filmmaker being so painfully clear. The reveal that it's his father might have been more impactful if somehow that like triggered a cure or something within him, within Blake, or if like, you know, his daughter reading his mind would somehow save him or other. Like, it would have been tacky, but then we would have gotten like the catharsis of the completion of that arc. As it is, it seems so bleak. It's very nihilistic. It seems like, oh, your trauma is inescapable. Like when his daughter like reads his mind at the very end, they mirror the scene at the beginning where he and his dad encounter the Wolfman with his daughter and his wife. So when they're having the confrontation, his daughter is like, Mommy, like, Daddy just wants it to be over. Like, he wants her to shoot him. So am I meant to be left with the impression that, like, trauma from your father is inescapable? That it's undeniable, irreversible, there is no hope for us? Where's the fun? Where's the fun? This is a monster movie. It just was so all over the place. And coming off the heels of Robert Eggers' Nosferatu, it's like, that's what a monster movie can be, you know? I didn't even love Nosferatu. I thought it was okay, but at least I got to drink in these absolutely dynamite visuals, and the performers weren't afraid to take it there, you know? It was so visceral. This movie was like, I want to fully reimagine the Wolfman, but I want to package it in the most generic way possible. What's the deal with that? So overall, 2.5 out of 5. I don't think The Wolf looks as bad as most people will probably think. In conclusion, that's a January release, all right? I'm gonna go now, but I hope that you enjoyed, and I hope that you subscribe to this channel if you want to see other reviews like this. I also have a second channel where I talk a lot about physical media and where I post travel content, so check it out. It'll be linked down below, as will my Patreon, where you get a bonus video every single week depending on which tier you join. More than anything though, I just hope that you enjoyed this video and that I catch you in the next one. Bye!